Hey, this is Warren Redlich. Thank you so much for watching. I'm here with Brian Wang from Next Big Future. Please check him out, nextbigfuture.com, Next Big Future on the X platform, Next Big Future on YouTube. We are going to, and Brian is an expert at predicting the future, if there is such a thing. We're going to talk about what the future is for Tesla with the election. We have an election where Donald Trump might get elected, Kamala Harris might get elected. I am particularly concerned with the danger to Tesla, the company, and Tesla stock if Kamala Harris wins the election, and to Elon. So the two basic topics we're going to talk about is, one, what happens if Kamala wins the election? And two, what are the probabilities that Kamala wins the election? Brian thinks that Trump, we talked about this before, Brian thinks Trump is likely to win. I wish I could be as confident, but let's be clear. Like I said, Brian is an expert at predicting the future. I'm usually wrong on my political predictions. So Brian, just for your background so people understand, when I say you're an expert on predicting the future, there's some future websites where people talk about, there's like prediction markets. Can you explain what makes you an expert at predicting the future? I know expert's probably the wrong term, but what makes you good at predicting the future? How can people tell you're good at it?
So I have a track record. So on Metaculus.com, the public site where they have a lot of participants, a few thousand, 5,000, 7,000 participants doing it. I'm ranked in the top 1% of those people based on doing 2,000 some predictions publicly. So basically you determine on some question and you predict what's going to happen, and then when it happens or not, then you get scored, and based upon that scoring, I'm in the top level. Particularly over the last 5 years, I'm ranked number 16 out of many thousands of people who do that. So I have a public record on that. I've done other things where I've made public predictions and they've been pretty good, where the actual result happened based on me saying before what was going to happen and then actually happening.
I want to start with the nightmares, what I consider the nightmare scenario, and I'll just start with this. I normally just vote Libertarian. I don't see a difference between the Republican and Democrat candidates.
Yeah.
To me, they're basically the same. My expectation is that that normally, they both spend too much money. They both raise deficits. They both spend too much money on foreign policy, and they don't believe in constitutional rights in general. They believe in government power. So although I think those things are still true between Trump and Harris, what we've seen I am an Elon Musk fan, and I'm wearing my Be Less Wrong t-shirt. That's elonbits.com if you like the shirt, elonbits.com, Be Less Wrong. Although I'm passionate about a lot of policy issues, the central issue that I've cared about for the last 5+ years is the mission of Elon Musk's companies, particularly Tesla and SpaceX, but also Neuralink is doing amazing things. I think Boring Company is going to be really important for the future. I think what X is doing for free speech is I've come on board with that. I didn't start with that in 2019, obviously. XAI, an AI that is honest, as opposed to an AI that's programmed to be dishonest, trained to be dishonest. So there's more. So when I look at the prospects, if Trump wins the election, it's not that he's great. It's just that he's generally supportive of Elon. He's generally supportive of what Elon is doing. He'll say something negative about EVs once in a while, but he showed up for a launch when he was president. Joe Biden and Kamala Harris, they can barely say Elon's name. They don't acknowledge the good things that he does. And what I'm seeing, not just from Kamala, but from Kamala and the deep state that she represents, is I think that they want to arrest Elon. I think they have determined that Elon has gone too far. And despite all the valuable contributions that he makes to what's really important for America, I think that they have decided to arrest him. And if they arrest Elon, I think that's really bad, obviously, for the future of Tesla, for the future of SpaceX, for the future of humanity. Because I think us getting off the planet, getting to Mars and having a colony on Mars is a wonderful inspirational goal for humanity. It is a backup plan. It is the start of humanity expanding into the stars. I think it's absolutely brilliant. despite all the whiners, it doesn't cost that much, especially the way Elon's doing it. I think transitioning from fossil fuels to sustainable energy is absolutely critical. The Democratic Party claims to care about it, but at the same time, the Democratic Party, and I'm not saying Trump is perfect on this, by the way, but the Democratic Party is choosing unions over Tesla. Tesla is the one that's actually delivering EVs. Tesla is delivering solar. Tesla is delivering battery packs. And yet Biden and now Harris are basically at war with Tesla. Then you've got Neuralink, which, when Nolan Arbaugh modded Quad on X, when Nolan Arbaugh got his Neuralink implant, we've seen his progress. That was one of the greatest moments in human history for me. I think landing the first, just to be clear, landing the first Falcon 9 booster safely was one of the greatest moments in human history. Yep. And Nolan Arbaugh getting a brain chip implant and being able to radically improve his life from his paralyzed state. And now a second one has got it. And the Biden administration, the Bideners have said nothing.
Yeah.
Nothing about there's no recognition. The media, because it's Kamala, it's the administration, it's the administrative state, it's the deep state, and it's the media. Did the media celebrate this amazing accomplishment? No, they used it to crap on Elon. To the extent that they talked about it at all, it was a negative rather than a positive. I look at the future and I say, if Kamala wins, you've got Pavel Durov got arrested by the French in France.
And the billionaire who's CEO of Telegram.
Right. Pavel Durov, the CEO of Telegram, and he had been approached multiple times by FBI agents. So the idea that the French did this on their own, I don't buy it. The Brazilian government is harassing X and SpaceX, Starlink, and they were put in place effectively. Lula and his government were effectively put in its place by American foreign policy under the Biden administration, Biden-Harris. Now you've got California Governor Newsom making it illegal to post parody memes.
Right.
And talking about legal action against Elon. And, Biden was saying we've got to look into Elon's relations with foreign countries.
Right.
Maybe you should have looked into Hunter Biden's relations with foreign countries. I don't know. $50,000 a month from a Ukrainian energy company to sit on their board when he knows nothing about Ukraine or energy. If Kamala wins, they're going after Elon hard.
Right.
They don't like X. They don't like free speech. They want to control speech. They don't value it because it's striking how valuable SpaceX Starship's going to be to the military. Neuralink for veterans. There's so many people who are going to benefit from what Elon's doing, and the federal government itself benefits from what Elon's doing. And we have the FAA harassing SpaceX. No fines for Boeing. Starliner was unable to bring humans back determined not safe to bring humans back from the space station. No fines. SpaceX gets fines for trivialities. SpaceX gets delayed. Starship is getting delayed. Let's start with this. I am concerned that if Kamala wins, what is the danger that they harass Elon, that they arrest Elon, that they damage Tesla?
I think the risk is pretty high. They've already did that Delaware thing where the Delaware judge was trying to rescind the $56 billion CEO 2018 pay package, which initially started at a far lower amount, to measure it with a super high performing CEO like Elon. So his peers were making $150 to $250 million in straight up cash per year. So if you were to buy options with that, based on, okay, if I can double or 10x the stock, then you would, from an option point of view, easily get $50 billion out of that. So but you have to do it. You have to actually double or 10x and whatever the stock, which he did over the next 3 years. And then the shareholders voted for it twice, and that judgment is still hanging out there, and that has impacted Tesla trading multiple times.
Yeah.
So that
it impacted my trading.
Right.
I sold 20% of my Tesla in anticipation of the shareholder vote, which went positive, and then I bought back in. And I'm actually thinking about selling 20% of my Tesla stock ahead of the election because of my concerns that I think she's unlikely to win, but it's really hard to know. But I just want to get to this. What do you think they might do to Elon if she won?
Unfortunately, it's not unimaginable that they would try to jail him, because they did it basically the French and the United States did it to Durov, so they jailed him. I think that indicates that they would be going to jail him, because you can just, on the same basis of not censoring what we tell you to censor, which is what they got Durov on, that they would then jail him. The other thing is that they could also charge various other charges to harass, like the SEC, almost got him to step down as CEO, because of other things before. So it would be trivially easy to do a lot of harassment and force him not to be CEO. They, in theory, could not take away all of his main shares, except that he actually owns. That would be more difficult, but you do have the Supreme Court, so that you wouldn't be able to do that.
Well, they have no. They have the Supreme. We have the Supreme Court now, but Kamala wants to pack the court. She appoints 6 new Supreme Court justices. Now has a Democratic majority of justices who, pretty openly, if you go with Ketanji Jackson, do not believe that the Constitution, as written, should be considered valid because it was written by dead white men.
So that would require winning the House and winning the Senate. Normally, it would require a supermajority in the Senate in order to pass any kind of constitutional change like that. But if you were saying they were completely corrupt,
no, not a constitutional change. I don't think they need a constitutional change to appoint new justices.
Okay.
Maybe I'm wrong about that. I don't think they need an amendment. I think they just need to. She needs to appoint new justices, and all of a sudden there's 6 more judges. I don't think they need an amendment for that. I could be wrong.
Still need at least majority in the Senate.
Yeah.
Because you couldn't. The Senate is the one who nominates judges.
Right. And so people understand. Normally, the Senate, if it's not a strong majority, the minority party filibusters, and you can't get the things done you want to get done. But the Democrats have said they're going to eliminate the filibuster.
So the way the U.S. you at least need to have that, which is not certain. Currently, it's the odds are that the Republicans would hold 51. But again, it's close, too close, such that if Kamala won, Harris won, and also they got the Senate and got the House, then they can start passing stuff. Again, normally, under a normal situation, just barely having majorities and whatever would be insufficient to get major change through, because you wouldn't be able to wrangle stuff in. But in a corrupt situation, that might not be a safe assumption.
Right. So but we'll get to the probability of her winning and maybe the probability of Congress. I see your point. She can only do so much if she doesn't control Congress. If the deep state, the Democrats don't, and there are Republicans who might support the deep state enough to do what she wants. I think that when you look at Gavin Newsom passing a law that's plainly unconstitutional, right? That parody is now illegal in California. Political parody in particular is now illegal in California. There's no speech more protected than political speech. We saw during COVID that the Democrats were actively suppressing free speech about COVID, which to me was largely political speech, and they largely got away with it. And I could now keep in mind, I'm unvaccinated. I used ivermectin when I did get COVID the one time. Joe Biden, who knows how many times he got vaccinated, said if you got vaccinated you wouldn't get COVID. He got it 3 times. So it's possible. It's possible I was right. It's possible that those of us who are critical were right. And basically they censored the truth. And Mark Zuckerberg has now admitted that Facebook participated in their censorship of the truth.
Right.
So, are you doing okay, by the way, with the sun?
Yeah, I'm okay. Yeah, I'm fine.
All right. So what are your, I see them finding, there's this famous line, show me the man, I'll show you the crime.
Yes.
I think that they arrest him. I think they arrested Durov. I think they will come up with some bogus excuse like we found some child pornography on X and you didn't do enough to stop it, so we're arresting you. Just like the French arrested Durov on that bogus reason for Telegram. It'd be like arresting the CEO of Verizon because people are texting, images that are unapproved on Verizon, on a cell phone network. It just doesn't make any sense. And the underlying reason is they want to control speech. They want They want backdoor access. They want to eliminate the encryption on Telegram. X
Right.
is I believe has already encrypted X messages, so
Right.
they want to have backdoors. They
Right.
want to have control over our speech. They don't want us to speak freely, and I think that they will use whatever they want as an excuse. And it is striking to me how many Democrat friends I have who have fallen for it, who have
Right.
fallen for the propaganda. So do you see what I'm saying? That like they will decide to
So
for
I will give another piece of evidence showing the concern that even if you're CEO, that you're rich, that, of an auto company, that basically you're vulnerable. And the other example of that is the CEO of Renault. So that person, I think he was also French, was in Japan and was arrested in Japan.
yeah.
And he was chairman of Renault / Nissan, whatever that thing was. And basically, it was like some people in Renault, didn't like him, and then they in Japan, whatever, didn't like how it was doing to Nissan, and then they arrested him. He only got out of Japan. I think he got smuggled in
Snuck out, right?
He snuck out in a container to get out of Japan. Otherwise, he'd be still jailed there. So, and they were, harsh jail conditions, other stuff, like a bunch of stuff going on to abuse that.
Isn't he hiding out in like an Arab country or something?
Yeah, I think he's hiding somewhere, not in France, not whatever, because of his enemies. So, basically, turned into a fugitive, despite being CEO of an auto company. So, to the people who think, oh, he's rich, billionaires can do whatever, again. Billionaires in Russia got killed, and then the stuff got confiscated. So, if you go down the road of banana republic corruption, then all bets are off, and just whoever controls the military and the force can do whatever they want.
So, before we dive into the election prospects,
yeah,
my feeling is if they really go after Elon hard, if they arrest him, even if they arrest him and he gets out on bail, if they go after Elon hard enough, I think it really damages Tesla, the company. It damages the ability for Tesla to innovate. It damages SpaceX and SpaceX's ability to innovate. I think SpaceX is a little more insulated, but still, Elon is the driver of innovation at all of his companies. And if you talk to watch any of the interviews with all the, Jim Keller and Andre Karpathy and Garrett Reisman, Wynne Shotwell, Elon drives innovation at these companies.
And also, there's a U.S. senator, who said they should nationalize SpaceX. There have been things where, only a lone guy, but saying, we need to take over Starship, we need to take over the whole company. Yeah. That has been floated out there as an idea by a political leader in the United States.
Right. So my fear is that they basically go to war with Elon. I mean, they're already at war with Elon, but they escalate the war with Elon to the point where basically they destroy the ability for Tesla and SpaceX to innovate. And so that's my fear, that, basically I'm thinking about selling 20% of my stock ahead of the election. If she wins the election, I probably sell another 30% of the original total, so that I'm somewhat more insulated. And I just watch what happens. And I'm ready to sell more, because I'm very, very concerned. So let's turn to that as someone who's advocated, owning. I own Tesla stock. I've suggested that Tesla stock is a great investment. I see these outsized risks occasionally. The shareholder vote was an outsized risk. It was a low probability risk, but it was an outsized risk if it happened. And I should say, my gut is, if I'm Elon, and I'm not Elon, and Kamala wins the election and they start going after him. They don't arrest him yet, but it becomes apparent that that's what's going to happen. If I'm Elon, I'd move to China.
Right.
I would move to China and start over from scratch. China would be happy to develop, not take anything from SpaceX, just go to China, work with Chinese rocket engineers, say, okay, let's start building rockets.
Yep.
And let's start building, and they're already building EVs. He doesn't really need to build EV. And if, let's start building AI, and we'll develop AI here. Right. Because even though he probably doesn't trust the Chinese government that much, they have demonstrated a clear commitment to sustainable energy and space that Biden and Harris do not support.
Mhm.
And and if they're going to make it impossible for him to do the things he wants to do in America, he's not going to like if he starts developing a Starship in China, there's not going to be an FAA telling him to delay
Mhm.
a launch.
Right.
If he wants to deploy a robotaxi, there's no NHTSA, harassing Tesla.
Right.
Like, we have the federal government has been harassing his operations, and I think if I were him, I would literally go to China, even though China politically is dangerous, and he would have to change his speech, and he would have to give up on free speech and X.
Right.
I think for the goals he's described, accelerating the transition to sustainable energy, making life multiplanetary. If Kamala wins, China's a better bet. Am I wrong?
I don't necessarily disagree. No, it would be one of those hedge your bets kind of things. You may not move it all the way, but you see how things play out. Also like the whole thing about if Congress is not turned, then that means the risk is less.
So, yeah. But if she starts appointing justices to the Supreme Court, if they expand the court, you'll see. It's not like the signs won't be obvious.
Right.
And Elon's smart enough to know when he's a frog in a boiling pot.
Yeah.
Right. He knows to jump out of a pot of water that's boiling. Right. Yeah. If it's not at a full boil yet, he can see it's getting hotter in here. I better get out. Right. What do you think about my theory that if Kamala wins and they come after Elon, he moves to China? Is there a better place for him to go?
No, I don't think there is, because it basically you have to, as we've seen, France is not safe, so Europe is not safe, so the other countries U.S. control. So the only one outside is China.
I mean, yes. I think he'd be very welcomed here in Thailand, but I don't think Thailand has the resources
to protect it. No.
It's funny because Thailand actually, just a little side note, Thailand's a pretty good launch location.
Yep.
We're really close to the equator. I think I wouldn't trust the Malaysian government, but I think Elon could work with the Thai government.
Mm-hmm. Yep.
Elon, come to Thailand. So,
yep.
So let's turn now to where I think it's probably a more interesting. I mean, I think that's interesting, but the really interesting question is, what is the probability of Kamala winning, and then maybe after that, what's the probability of them swinging the House and Senate? Let's start with this. You've done some analysis you shared with me before. What I might be able to put up some. If I can find it, I'll put it up on the screen. When
I have a what is it? A deck. So if I could share.
I don't know how do we do that on here.
Okay, so don't worry about that. I can just talk through it. So okay, so in terms of the election, if people look at the polling, if people who look at there's aggregators where they aggregate all the polls, the political polls, and it's looking like that there is a plus 1.9% for Harris nationally, and then in the 7 swing states, it's plus 0.1% for Harris. But so people need to understand is that for a national poll, the Democrat needs to be ahead by 3% to really have a good chance of winning. And in the previous 2020 or 2016, both Clinton and Biden were polling even more ahead of it at this point, even multiple points ahead. And then, of course, Hillary lost, Clinton lost, and then Biden only barely won. 3 states were within 10,000, 40,000 votes. So this is very close. But the other issue is that it looks like the polling has a lot of manipulated polls, which is not totally uncommon. But the way you know that a poll is manipulated is that you look at the breakdown of who do they poll. Do they poll what percentage of Democrats, what percentage of Republicans, what percentage of independents? Because if you have a poll that, say, has 50% more Democrats with Republicans, that is not reflective of what's going to actually happen. That it should be, right now, based on the counting registered by party and identity, it's looking like a plus 2% Republican thing. So when all these things were like Harris +4, and then you look down, and then you see that Democrats they polled like 800 or 500 versus 300 Republicans. So that is a skewed poll, and is basically they got some result, right? So they're not. So what is the other evidence that
are they being that obvious that the gap is that big? You know, 500.
Some of the polls are. Yeah,
Really?
some of the polls are that obvious. The gap is that big, but then they're trying to use this as a propaganda to make people think that it's closer or she's ahead, right?
Yeah.
I don't think it's actually the case. Evidence that is not the case is that the Teamsters, 1.3 million members in the United States of the Teamsters, which is a lot of truckers and et cetera, those they did 3 polls. They checked out of 358 chapters, 300 of them had some meetings back about 6 months ago when Biden was still in the race, and they said, stand up and raise your hand if you're for Trump, and raise your hand for Biden, et cetera. Back then, it was 44% for Biden, 36% for Trump, right? So it was Biden was ahead there, and they previous 2 elections, they both Teamsters fully endorsed Clinton and Biden. So then they had more than half their votes go to the Democrat. So then after Biden dropped out, and they did a 3-month electronic polling of all the people, right? So however, we don't know exactly how many voted, but a large number of them voted, and it came out 59% for Trump, 34% for Harris. So it swung by over 20%, right, of 1.3 million people, right? And then they did another phone poll to say, well, that was crazy. Let's have an organization do a phone poll and ask them. And again, they got 60% and 31% for Trump. So both those polls came out. So then the leadership said, okay, we're not going to endorse either one, but we have this kind of like thing. So that and normally they would say, okay, we do this polling, and we're going, well, you guys want us to endorse Trump, we'll endorse Trump. They didn't do that. And then of the local chapters.
But they didn't, they decided not to endorse at all?
They did not, the top level organization did not endorse at all.
Okay.
Right. Which Trump thinks is a win, which probably is a win. But then there was a bunch of media coming out saying 1 million Teamsters have endorsed Harris. What happened there? 260 of the 358 local chapters, the leaders, went against their membership and then endorsed Harris. Right. So basically, if you bribe 200 people, you can get, if we were to say that's how it happened, that they could do that. But then the question is, if 60% were Trump supporters, the fact that your union boss says, hey, I'm going to endorse Harris, they would say, a trucker would probably say F you. Yeah. Right? So what does that mean for the election? So the election really comes down to Pennsylvania. It is not, if you look at the states and which one they're safe, which one they're not, if you get Pennsylvania, the 19 electoral votes there, then pretty much Trump can't lose. According to Nate Silver, one of the big forecasters, if Trump wins Pennsylvania, 96% chance that he wins the whole thing. Right? Yeah. Other things around that. So Pennsylvania, according to the polling, a lot of which are fake polling, is showing a slight Harris advantage, but there are almost 100,000 Teamster voters in Pennsylvania. So if 70% of them vote, and then there's 25% gap, that's 20,000 votes. The last 2 elections, Pennsylvania was decided by 40,000 and 80,000 votes. Yeah. So if you have a 20,000 vote swing, that's huge for Pennsylvania. And also it can be indicative of the fact that Rust Belt states were kind of okay with Biden, with his Scranton Joe personality thing, but they weren't okay with Harris. So that's indicating that that the polling is incorrect.
Well, they have a habit of when they choose a woman, they have a habit of choosing a woman who's inauthentic, that people just who's fundamentally unlikable. And I love this effort that they're making. you mentioned it a little bit, but they're trying to make it like, oh, Kamala's popular. Look how well she's doing in the polls. And like, the public has been gaslit by the media for at least 5 years.
Right.
And people, you can't fool people into thinking she's likable just because you're saying other people like her.
Right.
But she goes on Oprah, and it's apparently Oprah made some face, and like even Oprah doesn't like her,
Right. Right.
You can't even get Oprah to like her. So
right.
I mean, I don't know. I didn't watch she hasn't done.
I watched it. So basically, she Oprah asked her a question, and it was about talking about guns, and she made the claim that she had the gun, and then she said, if you come into my house, you'll get shot. Right. That's what Harris said. If you come to my house, you get shot. And then she did her laugh. She did her laugh, and that's when Oprah made the face, because it was kind of a tone-deaf thing to say, I'm a compassionate person, and I'll shoot you and I'll laugh about it. So it's kind of, it was, like the wrong thing. And there's another thing where she was interviewing and talking about, she was asked, will you mandatorily take guns? And she says, no, I'm definitely not. But then you see this interview where she said that there's 5 million assault rifles, and that we'll have a buyback program.
I posted a video about that. So it's in the same interview, actually, that she said, we're not taking anybody's guns away, but we're going to ban assault weapons. And in another interview, she said there's 5 million of them, which is massively. There's 20 to 50 million AR-15s and AK-47s and AR-10s, and I just to be clear, I own an AK-47 and I own an AR-10. Unfortunately, they were lost in a boating accident before I left for Thailand, and I won't be able to find them when I come back where I hid them. I mean, sorry, where I lost them in the boating accident. I think that Kamala, the ability for her to say we're not taking anybody's guns away, but we're going to ban assault weapons.
Right.
Well, assault weapons are guns. First of all, we don't even know what she means by assault weapon, but presumably she means my AR-15, my AK-47, and my AR-10. We don't know what she means by that term, but you can't say you're going to ban weapons and then say you're not going to take any. And there was another thing where she said, we're going to come into your house.
Right.
We're going to make sure your guns are properly stored. So they're shooting the First Amendment, the Second Amendment, the Fourth Amendment. They recently blew out the Third Amendment. They don't believe in due process. That's the Fifth and 14th Amendments. The whole dispute with SpaceX and the FAA and finding somebody without giving them a chance for a jury trial. That's the Sixth Amendment. It's like we've already covered the first 6 plus the 14th, and I'm probably leaving out a couple.
Right.
They hate the Constitution. I don't think Trump is a true supporter of the Constitution. I just want to be clear. I don't think Republicans in general are true supporters of the Constitution. It's the overt disregard for the Constitution, the hatred of it. It's one of those things where you have you'll have the mainstream Democrats will sort of talk the we support the Constitution talk, but then the progressive wing, they'll basically say the Constitution should be disregarded because it was written by dead white men. Right. And that and Kamala was voted farthest left of anyone in the Senate in 2019, and left of Bernie Sanders, who's an open. They say he's not an open communist. He's a communist. Yeah. But he calls himself, what is he called, Democratic Socialist. No, that's just rebranding. It's like new code. Right. It's not working.
So on to the prediction. So the other two things are that there have been polls of the military. So Trump probably got 60% of the military vote last time, which is pretty good, right? But after the Afghanistan withdrawal, which was bad, 13 Americans died. They gave up all their gear, and a bunch of other stuff happened. All that stuff happened. So they pulled there's a mission call, which is about 1 million. It supports 1 million veterans, with support and all that kind of stuff. And they published it in Military Times, which is the military newspaper. And they did the poll. It was last year, and they found that 73% said that they felt that the Afghan withdrawal was a horrible thing. Changed their view of the service that they did, of which 775,000 served in Afghanistan. 2.1 million served, in Afghanistan or Iraq, and the other veterans and stuff, and their families and that kind of thing. So, and there was another. They said 80% felt that the leadership, civilian and military, need to be held accountable for the Afghanistan thing. So 73 to 8% have a pretty strong, motivation thing to vote against Harris, because she claims to have been the final voting decision to pull out of Afghanistan. So if that was the case, that would be another 10 to 15%
Wait.
shift.
I'm sorry, I missed that. She claimed it was her call?
Yes. She claimed that she was the last one in the room. She claimed that she was the one who, with Biden, helped make the last call on withdrawal from Afghanistan when they did and all that kind of stuff.
All right.
So she claims to own it, and it's a problem for Afghan veterans. And again, there's a lot of veterans in Pennsylvania who, again, so it would be another potential 10, 20,000 vote shift or more if that is true. So these two major things, suggesting the polling incorrect, and then there's other polling around minorities that it appears that Trump is picking up some black votes, Hispanic and Asian votes relative to last year. And there's no other, again, when you look at the sub-tabs on these things, I don't see where Harris would be getting the votes. And then if everything else stayed the same, then you'd have these movements toward Trump. So then the other thing is we actually have some live election data, because voting is started in some states. Of course, we don't know, we don't publish the count, but we see that some states require requesting ballots. So how many Democrats requested ballots, how many Republicans requested ballots. So in the previous election, it was far more Democrats requesting ballots than Republicans. And basically it was the mail-in vote that was a huge advantage. So basically, though, the drop in the mail-in ballots in Pennsylvania is down like 300,000 for the Democrats. They still outnumber the Republicans by 2-1, but instead of 3-1, you're down 2-1 on the mail-in ballot. So, and also it's indicating in North Carolina that only about half of the black vote, in which Democrats tend to dominate by 80-10, 80-20, or 90-10 on the black vote in Georgia and North Carolina, is actually down on that. So the evidence would seem to suggest that those people have to turn out on election day, and if they don't get turned up on the mail-in vote. And then another thing is the registered Republicans. So again, this is real data that would show before that. So the shift has been that in Pennsylvania, there was like 11% more registered Democrats last time, 2020, and now it's down to 4%. So there's been like a 6% shift towards Republicans versus Democrats in Pennsylvania. And there's a similar shift in most of the other states, where there's more registered Republicans, and also the Democrats not just didn't increase their thing, but they actually decreased by about 130,000 in there. So there's like a 300,000 vote swing in a state decided by 40 to 80,000 votes, right? So there's a bunch of these things where significant evidence that Republicans are leading and doing better in something that's already happening.
I think that both parties cheat. I was a member of the Republican committee. I was a member of the Democratic committee before that in my hometown. I was a member of the Republican committee in Florida. Particularly in my hometown, I saw Democrats cheat. I know Republicans cheated. I think the Democrats cheated more, but I think they both cheated. I think it's pretty clear to me that the Democrats believe in cheating.
Mm-hmm.
Not that the ordinary Democratic voters believe in cheating, but the Democratic Party establishment strongly believes in cheating. I think Republican, political consultants or whatever, they all believe in cheating too. Mm-hmm. But I think the Democrats, my joke is that whoever wins the election, the other side gets mad because the winning side cheated better. No fair, they cheated better than we did this time.
Right.
You said the swing state is Pennsylvania, and
yes.
The governor of Pennsylvania is a Democrat.
Mm-hmm.
Shapiro, who's probably going to get some premium cabinet position if she wins the election. So he's highly motivated to win the election. What are the prospects of them cheating? How many votes can they swing when they cheat? Is there a limit on it? Can they get as many votes as they want?
So the main aspect of voter cheating is ballot harvesting, as well as ballot stuffing. So you have to have ballot filters. That goes to the mail-in ballots. But if there's fewer mail-in ballots floating around, then there's less that you can do. You can't harvest what's not there unless you were to try and produce them. But then if you're counting, and they are counting how many mail-in ballots are sent, then if I mail out 1.5 million mail-in ballots, and then I count 2 million mail-in ballots, then it's like, whoa, what happened there, right? So they can't do that much there. And then also these traditional methods of cheating are well known to both sides, and a lot of money on the Republican side has been paid to get to volunteers and to other people to monitor the voting stations and to be on top of this. They won't catch everything, but it's a question of can they catch enough, and that if it's only 100,000, I think it's okay. It'll be fine. But so if it's ideally, it'd be better if it was more than just Pennsylvania. So if you have Pennsylvania and Michigan and Minnesota, because those are kind of a block in the Rust Belt and that kind of thing. If you have 3 states, it'd be tougher, particularly if you have governors. In Georgia, they just passed something that says that they have to do a matching hand count. They can't just go with whatever. So there is procedures being put in place to limit this. And volunteer-wise, when RFK joined Trump, he had 100,000 volunteers. So both on getting out the vote and on checking things and whatever. So they're reinforced on the number of volunteers that they have to more closely. And I think the Democrats might have 200,000 volunteers. So if you have 100,000 RFK volunteers and 150,000 Republican volunteers and 100,000 RFK volunteers, then they might be 250, 200,000. So, but then you also have the volunteers don't count the local. I'm just running the ballot box thing, which was biased 4-1 for Democrats. Where they should have picked equal, but then they loaded up on Democrats. So there is a number there, but they're being watched. Presumably,
well, you also have to worry that there are local. So the core of the Republican Party doesn't like Trump. There's not the core of the Republican Party voters, the core of the Republican Party elites. They don't really like Trump. And so there's going to be some counties where the Republican, they call it like a poll watcher or the ballot inspector or whatever, the election inspector. There's people who are volunteers, or they may get paid a small amount of money to serve as election officials to get things done. And it's typically, like in New York, you'll have 1 Republican and 1 Democrat, or 2 Republicans and 2 Democrats. But if the Republicans really support Harris, or they really dislike Trump, then they might allow the cheating to happen. I just wanted to give some color to this. So many years ago, I think this was 1996 maybe, I was a Democrat working on a Democrat challenger campaign for Congress. And there was this one particular voting location in an assisted living facility or nursing home. And there was one Democratic operative working for the incumbent who would basically go upstairs, come back downstairs with, through the elevator, come back with a senior who was basically incompetent. They would go up to the polling place and they would say, "I need help to vote." Right? This guy's going to help me vote. And he had like 50 people vote. He helped 50 people to vote for the incumbent. And you do that, you have 10 guys doing that in 10 nursing homes. In a small election, that's a lot of votes. So that's just one example of how they cheat. They're cheating with distorting the media. They're cheating with in a lot of different ways. But there's actual, bringing down people who literally don't know where they are. Right. Getting them to say something so that you can get to, help them to vote. And the election inspectors, technically it's legal. Right. The person says, "I need help voting." You're allowed to have help to vote. We want to encourage seniors to vote, but you're taking people with dementia, and they're all voting the same way. He's helping them vote by pulling the levers for them. Right. So this guy's getting 50 votes, and that's just one example of so many of how they cheat. And
Yeah, Google sending out only a notification to remind you to vote only to Democrats.
yeah, no, and it's funny because I requested a ballot. I'm in Thailand, and I vote in Florida, and I requested a ballot. I actually think so. I was on something like Facebook or Instagram, and I saw an ad, for foreigners to be able to vote, and I filled out everything, and then I checked. I checked, and I didn't see that. I was able to check to see whether it was done properly, and when I was able to go to Florida and see was it done, and it wasn't. And you can see where, well, if we see Democrats and we can identify, is this person likely to vote for who we want to vote for? Okay, we'll process that one, and if we think this person is not likely to vote the way we want, we don't process it. And so I think that kind of cheating happens. I think actually Elon's PAC was accused of doing something like that. You tell people to vote the day after. Remember to get out and vote on Wednesday.
Yeah, right.
Which is, to me, that's just funny. Like, people don't know what election day is. Come on. All right, so I think you only have 10 minutes left.
No, I have 40 minutes.
Have we missed anything?
No, so basically there is significant risk that if Harris is elected, and especially if she has the Senate and House Democrat.
Let's talk about that. Let's talk about the House and Senate. Let's talk about the House and Senate. You said she can only do so much if she doesn't get the House and Senate, and ideally, more than trivial majorities in the House and Senate. Although I think with bare majorities, and they can swing some Republicans to get what they want. What do you see as the prospects for the House and Senate? Which is harder for the Democrats to win, and why?
Senate is harder for them to win because they only 1/3 of the Senate goes up every time, and then based upon how things, it's pretty clear. Usually the races aren't close. So if I already have, 2/3 already decided, then only 13 who are being challenged, the Democrat or whatever. Anyway, so when you factor that in and then look at the actual races, it's looking like Republicans should get 51.
So what's the current balance in the Senate?
The current balance in the Senate, I think, is 49 Republican versus 51 Democrat. So
there's 33 or 34 seats up. Incumbent seats are usually safe. Incumbents are usually safe in elections. There's probably out of 33 or 34 seats, there's probably 3, 4, 5 seats that are considered close.
Yes.
So what are the races that are considered close? So what I'm reading is Democrats have 48 of the 100-member seats. The Republicans have 49 seats. Oh, Joe Manchin's retiring.
Yeah, Joe Manchin's retiring. Yeah.
So Joe Manchin, for those who don't know, is in West Virginia, and Joe Manchin is a Democrat who has been centrist, and it is generally thought, I guess, that a Republican would win West Virginia.
Yeah.
Right.
So Nevada, Texas, New Mexico, Missouri, and Virginia are considered close because they only have leans. And then Ohio's at plus 3.6 to Democrat or something like that. So again, there's some not great candidates are in there, but it's what the primary process where you end up with what you get. I don't think Texas. I think Cruz is going to pull up Texas. I don't think that's going to be the case. Anyway, so Nevada, New Mexico, Missouri, and Texas are I think the 5 that are more toss-uppy. In terms of more solid locks, it's you would have 44 Democrat and 50 Republican. So basically, it's can they solidly get the 1 or 2 that they need?
Well, like Montana, John Tester is the senator. Trump won the state by 16 points 4 years ago. So he won 6 years ago when Trump wasn't running. And he's being challenged by Tim Sheehy, who's a former Navy SEAL and businessman that Trump supports. So that looks like a risky seat so that could swing a seat from Democrat to Republican. And then in Ohio, Sherrod Brown's been very long, Trump-backed candidate, so maybe Ohio swings. And then you've got Nevada, Wisconsin, and Pennsylvania. So your gut is the Republicans probably pick up seats
in the Senate. Yeah, they pick up. I think they should pick up 2. And then if they're the Trump sweep actually happens, then maybe they pick up another 2.
So to put it another way, my fears that Kamala is going to come after Elon.
Yeah.
She really can't do that much without the Senate.
Yes.
And so even if she wins the election, cheating or whatever, if she doesn't get a majority in the Senate, it becomes much harder to, let's say, pack the Supreme Court. A 51-member Republican Senate is not going to let her pack the Supreme Court. So that's out. So that means that the Supreme Court. Right. Well, and yeah, I mean, then, typically the incumbent doesn't pick up seats in the midterm election.
Right.
So let's face it, we're going to see, maybe she's a great president, right? Maybe she does a spectacular job in her first 2 years, and all of a sudden we can say, hey, this isn't so bad, and then she picks up seats and everything goes better. But then if she's a spectacular president, then I don't have anything to worry about, right? We're all okay. But the odds are that she is a repeat of Joe Biden, but worse.
Right.
From everything we're seeing.
Right.
I just want to comment for a second for people. We're well into this. It's a little early, but a little late. But she is less authentic than Hillary Clinton, and unlike Hillary, she's unwilling to do an interview with a challenging journalist. Hillary would talk to anybody. Hillary wasn't. I don't like Hillary, but as a candidate, Hillary was not afraid to go and talk to Fox News. I don't think she was afraid to go and talk to Fox News. She would take on whoever, because Hillary's smart, right? She knew it. She wasn't authentic. She wasn't likable, but she knew what she was talking about. And Kamala is it's striking how dumb she. I don't know if she's faking it, but it's striking how dumb she appears to be. It's hard to believe someone can be, because I always thought George W. Bush wasn't very bright. Right. I always thought that he was able to, he was really good at networking. He was really good at making friends and all that. And he put good people around him. They weren't really good people, but they were smart people. He was able to build a network. Right.
Yep.
I don't think Kamala has any of that. She doesn't have Hillary's intelligence. She doesn't have Bush's networking. She's just, she's the ultimate DEI candidate. Right. I mean, I'm just struck by it. So, I really, it's striking to me that she's not she should be on Rogan. She should be going on Joe Rogan and doing an interview with Joe Rogan and be her authentic self, if she has one. I don't know if she has an authentic self. Is she Indian? Is she Black? Is she Jamaican? Because her father's Jamaican, but he's, it's not like her father was like some recovering slave. Her father's a professor at Stanford. Right? She's a child of elites. She was raised as an elite. She now claims to have a collards green recipe when I don't think they do collards greens in Jamaica. Where did she pick up this? They certainly don't do it in India. Why don't you, it would be so much more authentic if somebody said, well, what do you like to make for dinner? She says, I like to make reservations. That would be the perfect answer. That would be credible. Right. The idea that she loves cooking, does anybody believe anything she says? I don't get the feel that she does a lot of cooking.
Right. So, but inauthentic.
Why doesn't she embrace it? Why doesn't she just embrace who she is?
I think that who she is, being a very left-wing California progressive.
I mean the identity that, look, my mother's from India, my father's from Jamaica. They're both highly educated. I was raised in an environment where I was surrounded by really bright people. They had bright people over the house, and at the same time we were in Oakland, and everyone, you could bullshit and claim that you went out in Oakland and you saw what regular people lived like, even though nobody's going to believe it. But to just embrace, but to make up this idea that you're a Southern Black, descended from slaves, I don't.
So this is the same tactic that Biden does. Whatever crowd is in front of, I was, did stuff with Irish, I did stuff with Blacks, I did stuff with every group that they're in front of, they claim to be, I have this connection to you, which is just, again, strange. It's like when we have television, we have YouTube, we have stuff, so you would run these things side by side, and then when you make that claim, they'll just say, you're saying this here, you're saying this here, and then it doesn't hold up, right? Well,
this is what stands out to me about Obama and Clinton. Obama and Bill Clinton were authentic. I really dislike Barack Obama. That's a long conversation, but but he was authentic.
Mhm.
I don't think he wasn't pretending to be somebody he wasn't, as far as I could tell. Bill Clinton wasn't pretending to be somebody he wasn't. He was being himself, or at least he was the same self. He played the same character all the time. They were
Right.
consistent in who they were projecting themselves to be.
Right.
George W. Bush, I think, was relatively authentic.
Yeah.
I think George Bush Sr. was relatively authentic. George Bush Sr. didn't pretend to be a man of the people.
No, he didn't.
Look, my father was a senator. I directed the CIA. I know what I'm doing here.
Right. So that can work, but for some reason, they don't feel, it may not be just her, that her handlers and whatever have decided the strategy is, don't say that. And of course, they had to totally flip from what she said in 2019 to what she's saying now. And then she's saying, even asking me about that is wrong. But again, YouTube, it's all over there. Everything can be compared. So it's strange that they're trying to run this playbook of, the media working with her are saying, we're going to send this story out, and then pump it up and say that the last 6 weeks, up until 8 weeks ago, she was the worst vice president ever. Everyone was saying it, not just, Republicans, but Democrats are saying she's the worst vice president ever. And then suddenly it flips, and then, she's great. So it's this kind of weird thing that they think that they can just run this through, and the strategy seems to be somewhat working, and they're saying that these polls are correct, despite the fact that there's nothing, it's a very vacuous dish that they're serving up, saying, yeah, this has happened, why don't you believe it?
I will say this, I'm on Facebook very little.
Yeah.
My partisan Democrat friends are on Facebook. I don't see a lot of love for Kamala. They just hate Trump.
Right.
Like, the campaign is basically, I'm not Trump.
Right.
And if I can fake some level of authenticity long enough, and it's actually striking to me, I don't remember ever seeing this before with Obama. I don't remember seeing this before with Kamala in 2020. The number of Black YouTubers or Blacks that are asked about her and say she's not like white people can't say she's not Black, right? Mm-hmm. Trump said it and got a lot of heat for it. Mm-hmm. But the number of Black people who are just like dismissive of it. And what did I just see? I was watching this video yesterday. It's 3 Black guys, and they're watching Kamala at the National Association of Black Journalists.
Yeah.
And they start off with how she was introduced and how Trump was introduced to the same panel. It wasn't the same exact panel. And how Kamala is like welcomed and everything's, and the first thing that happens when Trump walks out is an attack question. Right. And Kamala's getting these guys are like ripping on how they're just giving her softball questions, and they went hard on Trump.
Right.
And the extent to which Black people are comfortable saying, no, she ain't Black. Right. I'm not allowed to say it. You're not allowed to say it. But I'm struck by the number of Black people I'm seeing saying, like, they'll go to a barber. I think there was some interview where, like, some CNN interviewer went into a barber shop.
Yeah.
And said, do you think Kamala's Black? And like 3 people said no. And and then the reporter started to tell them why they think the reporter called them low information voters. Mm-hmm. The insults. This is what Black people think, and this is why they're wrong.
Right.
Oh my God.
Right.
I do think it's funny that they got the Dick Cheney swing, like they're bragging about Dick Cheney supports. It's so transparent that we have the elites against the regular people. Mm-hmm. When you called Dick Cheney a war criminal when he was vice president, and Darth Vader, and now all of a sudden you're excited that he's supporting your candidate, like. They have no. And by the way, George W. Bush hasn't made an endorsement. I was surprised. I thought George W. Bush would endorse Kamala.
Right. Mm-hmm.
And so they keep talking about all these Republicans who are supporting Kamala. It's like, basically what you're saying is all the people who support the deep state support Kamala, and all the people who support regular people don't support Kamala. You're like, does this swing? Do you think it swings voters to hear that Dick Cheney is supporting Kamala?
No, I don't think it's in voters. No,
I think it just makes people dislike Cheney more.
Yeah, I know. I think it works. So yeah, the never Trumpers, Bill Kristols of the world, the Dick Cheneys, they've been just left that, and they all of the neocons like Victoria Nuland or whatever, she went over from Obama to, and she did have, I think, a role in Trump administration. But those the neocons who are pro-war are like doing stuff. So
well, let's talk about one other thing.
Mhm.
So I talked about the danger Kamala posed to Elon.
Yep.
I'm skeptical that if Trump wins the election, that he'll really be any better than he was last time. I don't think he was a great president. I think he did some good things as president. Just to be clear, I think the Abraham Accords, the treaties in the Middle East, the peace treaties in the Middle East were a good thing. I watched Jared Kushner on Lex Friedman talk about what the work they did in the Middle East, and I think they did good stuff. I think that's credible. I haven't seen any cogent criticism of the great work he did. I think reaching out to Kim Jong-un in North Korea was good. I think not starting any wars, not bombing Iran like the national security state wanted him to do. I think he did some good things, and he didn't provoke a war over Ukraine, and he did. The Hamas attack happened on Biden's watch, and maybe it wouldn't have happened under Trump. I'm not so sure about that. But when he got elected, he appointed a bunch of deep state people to run his government, and then they ended up screwing him over. Is he likely to do better a second time at putting together a team that will make the changes that are necessary? Will we see Elon chairing a Department of Government Efficiency or something to review regulatory reform and really make meaningful regulatory reform? Or once he gets in, will he not really care anymore? And he's really more about his ego than he is about anything else. What are we likely to expect if he gets elected?
I think he has to care, because if he doesn't clean up the government and other things, he knows that it's the same people in FBI, in DOJ, and CIA who were, hounding him. So that cleanup of the swamp, the deep state, has to happen. And in terms of like hiring the people who don't betray him, he now knows who betrayed him, and so he will, clean that up. So I think that it's not an option for him. It's a survival thing.
I would say this, when I'm looking at Trump, what are his motivations? I think his motivation, like right now, obviously, like you can say he just cares about America. Okay. I think he's a very selfish, self-focused person. So he could be concerned about his legacy. What does he want? What does he want how does he want to be remembered in history? He wants to be remembered as a great president. I would also say, looking forward, I think his children are pretty strong. Don Jr., Eric, and Ivanka in particular are pretty strong. And, I could see, just as an example, Ivanka, is it Ivanka, the Ivanka?
Ivanka's the oldest daughter, I think.
Yeah, the daughter. I could see her, I don't know that she would want it, but I could see him looking to the future and saying, okay, after I serve another 4 years, who's coming after me?
Right.
And it could be one of his sons. It could be Ivanka. It could be Tulsi. Like who sets? I think his motivation has to be more than just I've got to take out the CIA people because they came after me. I think he could be looking at a future of how do we get more, who's my successor?
Yep.
Right.
Definitely.
And who's going to succeed me in running the Trump organization is one problem he has, and then who's going to succeed me politically. And you can already see, you can see Tulsi Gabbard and Robert F. Kennedy Jr. Robert F. Kennedy Jr. is getting a little old. Tulsi Gabbard, you could see his kids, like who ends up fulfilling the Trump legacy after he's gone.
Right. I think he wants to create a system whereby, Republicans are strong and where if he had a great 4 years, then all the claims of and bad stuff would have happened under Trump. The 2 terms have happened, and then that's what actually happened.
Yeah.
So that those claims of he would do whatever would be, no, here's what he actually did. And so he would do that, and then if he can set things up for his VP, although I'm not sure he can do it now, but you never know what 4 years would happen to him, or whether it's children, or whether it's the people, his allies now, Vivek or whatever, that could end up being it, or state governor, senators. So
Yeah, JD Vance.
he could.
JD Vance would be a good successor. I read, if anybody hasn't read his book, the book is Hillbilly Elegy, Elegy. Great book, highly recommended. The fact that they crap all over him for going to Yale, when you look at his past,
Yeah.
you know, I think the guy's amazing, and I really think like the gaslighting. It's one of those things where, you know, I stopped watching mainstream media news in 2015 when Trump was running. I didn't like Trump, and I didn't support Trump. I voted Libertarian in the last 2 elections, and I don't think I'm voting for Trump. I'm confident I'm voting for Trump this time.
Yep.
But I look at the way the media changed around 2015.
Yeah.
There was just this stark change to all of a sudden. I feel like the media was better before 2015. And maybe I just didn't see it until 2015, but the term gaslighting, that they just keep lying to us, and then with COVID, it just went into overdrive, and I think that they damaged themselves. They damaged the American people, but they ended up damaging their own credibility so much that, like, I literally can't watch CNN or Fox News.
Right.
I can't watch them. They're unwatchable. I can't watch, I can't watch Trump speak. I try to watch Kamala speak, and it turns my stomach. I can't watch Trump speak because he's like a stand-up comedian, and I think he has funny moments, but like it just doesn't work with me. I genuinely believe he's a stand-up comic.
Right.
I think a good politician has to be a stand-up comic. You have to read the audience, figure out what they like, figure out what works with the audience, and do that again. And I think he's pretty good at that. But it's just like, I'm not the audience that it works on. I'm not a fan of Trump. I just think Kamala Harris is dangerous. Biden has proven to be an absolutely awful president, and Kamala Harris would be worse.
Yeah. I think that if we have 4 years of Trump presidency and stuff like that, that the evolution of media will continue, and also the Starlink system and X will proliferate to, up from 600 million up to the billions of people, and the amount of activity, a couple million viewers on 3 million viewers on Fox total, and 1 million on MSNBC, and like 500,000 on CNN, that those legacy media, because of the fact that they give me all crap, will completely disintegrate, and their financial model will completely break, and then that will also get things replaced where you have like the new media.
Well, but their financial model isn't going to break, because their financial model is big pharma pays them. Mm-hmm. There are certain corporate interests that pay them to send the message they want sent, and they almost don't care how big the audience is.
But if the audience shrinks, like CNN shrinks to like 250,000 or something like that, then it's just unsustainable. You become irrelevant. Like, you can't pump up what everyone's ignoring, right? If those the viewers go away, then also age demographics and other stuff like that, because their audience is over 65 mainly, right? So if the people who are the habit of watching that, like the people of the habit of reading New York Times, the Washington Post, that is declining. It doesn't matter.
Oh,
it's a matter of age out.
You just hit me. Like, I got triggered yesterday. The New York Times published I don't even understand why they did this thing on Elon's security spending. Mm-hmm. Like the spending that Tesla and SpaceX spend on protecting him. And they literally had an illustration of him with targets, the bullseyes on his head. Like, what? And I found the illustrator. They credited the illustrator. I found the illustrator on Instagram. He said, "Oh, those are Tesla test tracks." Like, are you kidding me?
Yeah.
They're clearly target. I'm a shooter. They have bullet holes in them.
Right. Yeah.
And it was just so shocking to me that the New York Times thinks it's important to do an expose on the fact that the world's wealthiest man has security. Mm-hmm. Right. And yet they haven't investigated the Secret Service's absolute and utter failure to protect Donald Trump.
Yeah, right.
And this is a point that really strikes me about what's happened over the last 10 years or so, 8 years or so, is there's this idea that we need to believe in our institutions. And I'm a libertarian, so I never really believed in our institutions very much, right? I was always sort of skeptical, but I thought the Secret Service was good at their job.
Right.
They've destroyed my faith in the Secret Service. I thought the FBI was largely objectively pursuing criminals.
Yeah.
I thought the SEC was largely objective in pursuing people who were defrauding the public. And I no longer believe in the SEC, thanks to them targeting Tesla and ignoring the shorts. I no longer believe in the FBI. I mean, I was a criminal defense lawyer. I was somewhat skeptical. I've always been somewhat skeptical of law enforcement, but I literally thought that, if the FBI had got you, then they got you.
Yeah, there's a reason it was valid. Yeah.
Well, no, and they were good at their job. Like, local cops can screw up. The FBI, they really nail down their case, and they've got something, and they pursue important cases. And the level of the extent to which they've gone after Trump on bullshit charges, the courts. Like, I'm a lawyer. I believe I was trained to believe in our court system, and now I don't really trust our courts anymore. And I was skeptical. As a lawyer, having practiced in courts, I saw their flaws, right? But I thought they were generally pursuing truth and justice with flaws, right? And now, like, what happened in New York with the prosecutions, for those who don't know, I've looked at some of the prosecutions of Donald Trump. They're all bullshit. Any judge with any sense would have thrown these cases out. The only reason that these cases are still around is because the judges are complicit in it. And judges in New York in particular, and I'm sure this is true in other states, there is a political connection to how you get the job. But once you're in the job, you're in the job. You can do whatever you want, and they're not going to throw you out.
Yeah.
So, and, if they throw you out, you'll get some sweet job at a law firm because you know so much about how the courts work. So judges are largely immune from political pressure, but they can be partisan. They can believe in their side. And the extent to which they've gone after Trump and the way that they've used, lawfare to go after Elon, like I'm trying to think, like the CDC. I've lost all faith in the CDC. The FDA. Like, what government agency am I supposed to believe in now?
Right.
NASA?
Right.
NASA, okay, sort of, maybe a little bit, I don't know who I'm supposed to believe in anymore.
Right. So I think that if, and again, I said there'd be pushback. If you're head of a government efficiency agency, and most of the agencies are broken, and if you did some kind of when he bought Twitter, he covered 80% of the people, and then had to run with 20%. So if you deregulate a bunch, so that there's not all these extra regulations around, and then you also shrink government massively, then that would be a huge win. If things are broken, then why have them around? Supposedly the reason that you have them around is because the private sector can't do it. But there's ways. This is the whole private sector, public sector debate, which is a long thing. But basically, it's that people don't know is that you have a lot of government because we couldn't have a private military, we can't have a private police force, you can't have a private fire department. But there are cities and towns, some towns that have private police force, private fire department, where you have volunteers and you have people working it. So there's ways to do it where the case that it can only be done by government is incorrect. And so there's ways to massively shrink that down. In the Reagan era, where the last time they did a large reduction in government was in the Reagan era, they got rid of a lot of stuff. It did increase the number of quasi-government things where they spun something out. It became a corporation, just outside of Washington that would then run things. So you didn't kind of all get away, but at least it trimmed down the main part of government, and then you had this semi-government thing going along beside it. But if you were to completely do that, there's ways to still have other services, but massively reduce the footprint of government, which would then,
No, so I have a take on that, which is it's very hard to reform. Like you'll see somebody say we're going to cut spending 10% across the board. Well, if you try to cut spending 10% across the board, you've got opposition all across the board.
Yeah.
But if you identify, all right, I've got 4 years, once a month, I'm going to pick a target every month for the next 4 years. So I got 48 swings of the bat. Okay, maybe 45, whatever, but something like 48 swings of the bat. This is my target for this month. We're going to take on this agency. We're going to either do these massive reforms or we're just going to eliminate the agency, and then we're going to identify what functions need to be done, and we're going to start a new agency that just does those things.
Yep.
Okay, and I'm going to go to Congress. I'm going to say, this is what I want. I'm going to identify the critical members of Congress, say, if you're not on board with this, I'm going to be in your district tomorrow. We're going to identify your district. We're going to say, this is why this is important. We're going to make this case to your voters, and I'm going to come after you if you don't back this. You identify who's on board with it. This is what we're going to do. This is how we're going to save the republic. This is how we're going to save the American people. It's how we're going to save our country.
Right.
And you identify like an agency that's just completely gone off. Like I'll give you a really simple example for a second, just like out there. Voice of America, created to fight communism. Right, and it's like completely lost its mission. We spend, I don't know, $100 million a year on something that's complete. Like it was a radio broadcast. No one fucking listens to radio anymore.
Right.
It should be gone, but these things never die. So
Right.
I'm not saying that's the first one. And I would just say, for me personally, like I don't think Trump views it this way, so I don't think this is going to happen. But if you want to cut spending, you've got to cut back the military.
Yep.
As commander in chief, he could just say, "Okay, we're bringing home." Like when you see how NATO has been screwing the NATO countries have been screwing with what we want, I would just say, "Okay, we're pulling out of NATO. We're bringing all U.S. troops home. We're shutting down all U.S. bases in Europe. We're shutting all. We have great relations with Japan. We're going to keep. I would pull out of Japan and South Korea too, but whatever. Just bring the troops home from a large number of countries, and scale down the military." Which is a tricky one because that's one of Trump's biggest supporters is soldiers. But you have to at the same time say, in order to preserve veterans benefits, we have to stop wasting money.
Yep.
So we need to stop defending France. We need to stop defending Germany. We need to stop defending these countries that are destroying themselves. Europe is not being destroyed by Russia. Europe is being destroyed by itself.
Yeah.
Right? The European governments are destroying themselves. So I think that you take a bold move once a month and say, this is what we're going to do. This is what we need to do. This is why we need to do. You make the case for it and you show this is how much of your money they're wasting.
Yep.
We need to stop that waste, and here's how we fix it. And then you go to Congress and say, I want this done by the end of the month. And if it's not done by the end of the month, I'm coming to your district. And then you basically, in the first 2 or 3 months, you have to pick 2 or 3 congressmen and just destroy them in their district. Right. You go to their district and you say, this is what this guy's doing. He's opposed to the American people. You need to let him know. And there's protests at that congressman's office every day. And every congressman sees that and says, okay, I understand the agenda they're pursuing and I might not like it and my backers might not appreciate it, but I don't want these protests at my office.
Yep.
And I don't think you can do it as like one broad package.
Right, yeah, that makes sense.
One a month, once every other month, whatever. You identify, here's the big change we need to make. You build support for it. And then you identify the congressmen who are resisting and you go to their districts. And you get your people protesting at their office saying, you are not going to win re-election if you don't get behind this.
Yep.
I will make sure you lose your next election if you don't get behind this. And I think that's how you do it. And I don't think that's how people see it. I think people think you just do some across the board thing. And it's like, no, if you do an across the board thing, now you've got to pick on 400 congressmen.
Yep.
You can't go to the district of 400 congressmen at the same time, but you can pick 1 or 2. You can't, if you're trying to take on all these agencies, now there's a whole bunch of people who are benefiting from that who support it, right? If you pick one agency that's got, 50,000, 100,000 employees, they're not as dangerous. It's easier to pick that off.
Right.
When Elon shows up at X, the thing is that Elon didn't have to worry about democracy. He shows up at Twitter, he takes over, he fires 80% of the staff. That's a little bit of an exaggeration. A bunch of them left, right? But he cleaned house. He could do that because he's in charge.
Right.
He doesn't have to worry about voters. He doesn't have to worry about members of Congress resisting him. So I don't think it's as easy as walking in and wiping out 80% of government jobs.
Right, right. You're correct. It would have to be your strategy, like I said, of like
Yeah.
bite-sized pieces, and then keep repeat. Yes.
And then you also want to see Elon has this idea that every regulation should have a sunset provision, that every regulation has to be reviewed every 10 years, and by default it goes away.
Right.
Right. There has to be a commission that reviews regulation. Is this regulation still doing any good? Okay, no, it's out.
Right.
And let's throw out a bunch of regulations, see what happens. If we find something we need, we put it back in. I think how you implement that across the federal government is a challenge. But I think that's probably like a really high priority for Elon. And I don't know whether Trump's going to share it. I don't know whether that's the kind of thing. So when I talk about what I see, it's like you got to get the voters behind it. You basically show the voters this is how much of your money they're wasting.
Yeah.
This is how we fix it. I don't know if it's as obvious to the voters how, sunsetting regulations. I don't know how you make that resonate with voters. Maybe you can do it anyway, but it's harder to see how it
voters, there's like some 180-year-old law about railway things that because that's in place, then you can't do something with cars and other stuff like that. There's a bunch of things where it's like really absurd ancient regulations.
Oh, my town had a bridge that they couldn't fix because it went over a railroad, and they couldn't fix the bridge because of the railroad. And then there's the Jones Act, which controls shipping and dramatically. There's so many things that increase prices. And just like a short point here, because I'm in Thailand, and I go out to dinner with my new wife, and I spend $10 and have a really nice dinner, and we can literally eat lunch or dinner for like $4, like a nice Thai meal, right? Yeah. Japanese, did we go to a nice Japanese restaurant? We went for sushi the other night. It was like $15 for like big plate of salmon sashimi and then a few pieces or whatever, and it was like $15, including drinks, right? Yeah. Including not alcohol, right? Including iced tea or whatever. And everything is so much more expensive in America, and there's so many things that drive up prices in America. And the Jones Act is something that most people don't know about, but it regulates shipping inside the United States, and it makes everything more expensive. Right. So how do you make things less expensive? Trump doesn't really have an answer to that. I don't really buy Trump's answer to the inflation problem.
The inflation thing is reduce oil prices by half, and then deregulate, and then
It's easy to say all that stuff. Making it work is a totally different thing. But I don't care about that. Like I said, my central issue for this election, and we should probably wrap on this. My central issue for this election is that Elon Musk is pursuing an agenda with his companies to improve the world for humanity, to improve humanity's future, to get us into space, to shift us from fossil fuels, to cure brain diseases, and the Neuralink, the potential for Neuralink to improve humanity is huge. Eliminate soul-crushing traffic with a Boring Company, a truthful AI with Grok, which I use several times a day now. I probably use it more than 10 times a day. I ask Grok questions. I've actually shifted. I use Google a lot less. I shifted I was primarily a ChatGPT user. I now use Grok as my first LLM. I continue to use ChatGPT and Claude from Anthropic, and Llama a little bit from Meta, but primarily Grok. But his AI is trying to be more truthful. The goal is to be a truthful AI. So there's so many things he's doing that are so important, and free speech, of course, on X, which I'm on all the time. So, and by the way, I'm frustrated with YouTube. I'm waiting for X to have a true video homepage so I can stop going to YouTube to watch videos.
Yeah.
Because the YouTube homepage has just collapsed. The recommendation engine is just terrible. I'm not getting videos I want to watch anymore. I'm getting videos like I've already seen that. I've already seen stuff like that before. This is new. Give me something fresh and new. And the algorithm is failing. I think X has more potential to serve you the videos you want to see because you're interacting with X on something other than just watching videos. So it gets more information. So I think there's so much potential for X to become a better video platform and just wreck YouTube.
Right.
I'm so ready to switch.
Right.
Give me a YouTube. As a content creator, I've already, all my videos are posted simultaneously on X, if not sooner. And I don't find, by the way, it hurts this is one of those things I wish more content creators would do this. Put your videos on X.
Yep.
You're not going to lose YouTube views. You do not lose YouTube videos. For any content creator, there's probably no content creators watching, but tell your content creators that you watch, hey, post your videos on X directly. Don't just post a link to YouTube. Post your videos on X directly. It does not hurt your YouTube. And then over time, advertising revenue and viewership will improve on it. You don't gain that much by posting on X because people don't watch that long. It's not a great video platform yet, but it doesn't hurt you.
Right. Okay. So it's a good talking to you. I think we settled those issues. Hopefully we'll have some good results in less than 2 months now, 45 days, a month and a half. So we'll see what happens.
Thanks, Brian. And we're going to talk again soon. What you wanted to talk about, I think we want to talk about Tesla more directly. Robotaxi,
Robotaxi, Optimus, and then
Semi.
The SpaceX talking about colonizing Mars.
Yeah.
$1 trillion. We'll